Hello, today is November 18th, a Sunday, and we have a lot to talk about. The first thing I have is the Petraeus scandal. Obviously, as I assume most of you know, General Petraeus admitted to having an affair, and General Allen is supposedly had lewd emails with a person under him, I believe. Anyway, she's an honorary diplomat. He denies it, although it's almost self-evident at this point that if someone says that the emails were clearly, explicitly, and I'm quoting, lewd, then they probably are. The issue here isn't so much that they had an affair, it's whether the affair compromised national security. I personally don't think it does. I think that even someone who has an affair has a certain level of decency as to not involve that national security matters. Both of these men have extensive careers, particularly in Afghanistan, and I don't believe that had anything to do with Benghazi. I don't particularly buy into that line. However, I do think that when both Clinton and Petraeus said they wouldn't testify on Benghazi, it does raise suspicions and it fuels the conspiracy theorists. I don't believe it has anything to do with Benghazi, and Petraeus had a testimony in closed-door hearings, and his testimony revealed that they knew originally, within 24 hours, that it was a terrorist attack. And the question then becomes, why did Ambassador Susan Rice not seem to know that fact? I think that, as evidence shows, someone in the White House, I'm not saying that's anything to do with the president, I find it unlikely that it would, but someone in the White House took out Al-Qaeda from the notice, because it was originally included, apparently, as Petraeus said in the testimony, that Al-Qaeda was originally included. So someone had to take out Al-Qaeda from the talking points, and someone has to be probably from the State Department or from the White House, considering that Susan Rice ultimately said that it wasn't a terrorist attack, or they didn't have enough information even at the time they did. The second story, I think I covered everything I could with that one. The second story is the bigger story, the Israel/Gaza conflict right now. The issue here is that I come down strongly on the side of neither here. Hamas shouldn't be, obviously, launching rockets into Israeli territory, nor should Israel be responding so aggressively. Here's my point. Right now, Hamas is being blamed for most of the rockets, most of the terrorism within Gaza and within Israel. So let's look at the history of Gaza, or history of Hamas rather. Hamas was encouraged in the 1980s by Israel, by the Mossad, because it was seen as a way to arise a conflict within Palestinians, within the national secularists led by Yasser Arafat, and Hamas, representing the radical Muslim extremists within the Palestinian, or the Free Palestinian movement. So what happened was more people joined Hamas and more people sided with the radical Islamists. So what Israel wanted to do didn't work. So now they're saying we have rockets coming in from Hamas, from Gaza, and the only way to respond is to fire back. Sure, that's correct. You can't just sit there and do nothing as your citizens are being killed. But the lesson we have to learn from this is blowback. Blowback occurs whenever a country intervenes in another country, and then an effect comes. It could be 20 years later, but eventually the effect arises. I'll give you a few examples. In 1953, we installed the Shah in Iran. In 1979, the Iranian Revolution, the entire point of it was to remove the Shah from power. What happened was Iranian militants, or you could argue whether they're militants. I'll say that they were militants, kidnapped our civilians and held them hostage. Some of them died. That's a clear example of U.S. actions causing blowback toward the United States. Another example would be 9/11. We started bombing Iraq in the mid-1990s. Bill Clinton started it. And we also started droning them. We also had sanctions, and the sanctions killed hundreds of thousands of children in Iraq. And that led to tensions, increased tensions with 9/11. Same thing like with 9/11, if you go even deeper beyond the mid-1990s. In the 1980s, we supported Osama bin Laden because he was against Soviet occupation. Then when we started bombing them, he was against our occupation. So that's how blowback works. The same thing's happening in Israel. They supported Hamas in order to divide Palestinians. What happened was more Palestinians joined Hamas, and now Hamas is launching rockets into Israel. So these are predictable consequences inherent to international, or rather, I guess it would be redundant, inherent to foreign policy. And that has been proven throughout history to happen, and it's happening now. It will continue to happen. The same thing's going to happen, and I know this might be a bolder prediction, but I predict that we will eventually either have to directly launch a strike into Iran or invade Iran, either us or NATO, like what happened in Libya or something like that, because we're doing the same thing in Iran that we did in Iraq. Drones, sanctions, and it all ends up, if we don't learn from the mistakes then in history, then it's destined to repeat itself. That's what's going to happen, I think. Also, you do have the issue with the technology of Israel compared to the technology of Hamas. Right now, we provided Israel with the Iron Dome, and the Iron Dome shoots down these very primitive missiles from Hamas. It has over a 90% success rate. So, essentially, the point is, Israel has drones, Iron Dome, etc., and we pay for more of their military than their own citizens do, we as in the United States. So, it's that against Hamas. I think someone has the edge here. It's very clear they have the edge here. Israel has nuclear weapons. I don't think they're going to use it on the Gaza Strip, but still, they have nuclear weapons. They're pretty advanced military power. They have F-16s, etc., provided by the United States. So, the point is, the same thing's happening right now that happened about 4 or 5 years ago. What happened a few years ago was there were 8 civilians in Israel that were killed or wounded. Israel responded by killing 1,400 Palestinians. It's a very high ratio of Palestinians to Israelis because most of the rockets are being launched from civilian populated areas. From civilian populated areas in Gaza. So the only way to kill the people launching the missiles is to kill civilians. And I mean, drones have a terrible success rate. Terrible. It's for every 2 terrorists you kill 98 civilians is the record for drones. It's not a very good record. So I think what happens is the blowback again, and I'm going to keep bringing blowback up because it literally accounts for almost every tragedy in national security or foreign policy. Since they kill such a high number of civilians for every terrorist, guess who starts hating both Israel and the United States more? The families and friends, the civilians who got killed, who didn't have any intentions of blowing up Israel or ending Israel or killing Israelis, etc. Most Palestinians don't want to kill Israelis, no matter how much everyone says otherwise. They don't. They're peaceful human beings and they want to live in a peaceful society. And most of them actually, I believe the statistic was about 67% want open borders between Palestine and Israel. The next subject would be the fiscal cliff. The fiscal cliff is really not something that's new. I think most people predicted it a while ago. The fiscal cliff is a culmination of tax increases and spending cuts that will go into place if a deal isn't reached. Here's what the deal is going to be, and I guarantee this. It's going to come down to the last day, maybe the last few hours, Then Republicans will compromise and raise taxes, and then the Democrats will compromise and cut some baseline spending, meaning not even real spending. They'll cut increases. They'll cut increases. They won't cut actual spending because no one cuts spending in Washington. So that's what I predict is going to happen. It's not really going to be good for the people, and I guarantee that it will not stop the debt crisis, nor will it won't even come close to solving the deficit, and it won't even try to pay down the current $16 trillion debt we have right now, over $16 trillion. And I mean, it's very ludicrous, the tax increase argument. If you took 100% of all the money from the top 1%, you only pay for the budget for about 3 months. It wouldn't even like close. It would only close the gap of the deficit for 1 year, 100% of the money. Rather, not even for a year, for a quarter of a year, and it won't even try to pay down the debt. So the tax increase argument is nonsense because no one's proposing taking away 100% of the top 1%'s money. That's insane. They're proposing like 5% increases, things like that, and it's been calculated that the increases proposed by the Obama administration would only pay for the government for about 8 days. So I don't have much hope for a solution to the fiscal cliff. The final topic I have is the Ron Paul farewell speech, or just his farewell in general. I think that Ron Paul has been one of the greatest congressmen, if not the greatest, to ever serve in the history of the United States. I think that his contributions are not yet practical, except for the end of Fed bill, but that's going to get stuck in the Senate. But they're more intellectual. They're going to be. I think we'll see the practicality of it in the years to come, in the elections to come. More young people are in the Ron Paul movement, including myself, and many, as I mentioned in the previous video, a few Ron Paul Republicans, I don't think they'd call themselves that, but they're Liberty Republicans, got elected or re-elected, like Kerry Bentivolio, Justin Amash, Rand Paul, etc. So I have hope in that sense, that maybe in 2016 we'll have a Rand Paul ticket. Rand Paul and Justin Amash ticket, although maybe that's a bit far off. But I'm hoping. Just regarding Ron Paul, I really hope he doesn't just disappear. I really hope that he has rallies, that he travels to college campuses. I'd love for him to come back to Independence Hall, because I was at his rally then. I hope he continues to a certain extent in being in the political sphere. I hope he doesn't retire into oblivion. But I think his message is effective. I think it's right, more importantly, and I think it's spreading. So, from the perspective of a person who's volunteered for his campaign, who's gone to his rallies, who's dedicated over a year of his life to the Ron Paul movement, I'd just like to thank him for all he's done and for all he will continue to do, and what his legacy will continue to do for the United States of America. With that, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and as every week, there will be a new video by